What's up, guys? Welcome to a very, very special episode. We have the biggest Toronto Maple Leafs fan with us today, covering the Toronto Maple Leafs heading into the 2023 NHL Trade Deadline. Mr. Steve Dangle, where you could see him on SDPN, the Steve Dangle podcast, and sometimes on Sportsnet. So thank you so much, Steve, for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So this is kind of a weird time for the Toronto Maple Leafs, as they're one of the top teams in terms of the standings, but also, like every single deadline, they're always linked to every single player available. Is there anyone in particular that, kind of interests you out of the guys they've been linked to, such as Meier or Gavrikov, Patrick Kane, O'Reilly, or basically everyone on the trade list?
Yeah. I'm not really into Patrick Kane. Little scared off by that, and he's just had, apart from his injuries, like, he just seems miserable. Like, there was a quote today about someone asked him about Kirby Dach's success, and he's like, "Well, yeah, I'm not surprised." So, like, I don't know how you're supposed to feel if you're the kid they traded. Yeah. Or the kid the Blackhawks got with the pick. Gavrikov, I don't think makes much sense. He's a fine player. The price is astronomical. It's a price worth paying, like a first-round pick plus, if you're able to keep a player beyond a rental. But I've heard, and many others have heard, that Gavrikov isn't willing to sign an extension in Canada, and I don't know if you know where the Leafs play, but it's there. So so that's not a great fit. I still think it's going to end up being with Chicago. Jake McCabe's got term left. Lafferty's got term left. Colin Blackwell, who's a former Leaf, has term left. But I'm hearing St. Louis creeping in there. I do like Ivan Barbashev. I think he's a good player. It's probably going to cost at least a second. But Timo Meier, he's my belle of the ball. I've had him in fantasy all year, and I've struggled so much to find a Leaf on my team. I wasn't able to draft any, so I need the Leafs to go out and get him.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things too, and I've watched your podcast quite a bit. I pretty much watch every episode, so like I watch a little bit, so I kind of know what you're going for. And you basically talked about how Kyle Dubas always trades with like the same 6 teams all the times when he does trades usually, right? That's why Gavrikov makes sense, because he's traded with Columbus in the past. Arizona with Chychrun makes sense too, because he's traded with Arizona in the past. To me, I think, I liked your idea and kind of your perception of Jake McCabe and Sam Lafferty. It seems a lot of what Kyle Dubas tends to do, right? Which is add a depth forward and usually a defenseman in most cases during the offseason. One of the things that I've kind of been surprised about, and I think this is what I believe too, is, and we made a Patrick Kane trade destinations video not too long ago, and I said that Patrick Kane was going to end up in Toronto. And the reason I said that is just because, we've heard rumors about how he wanted to play with Matthews, and I think that although he's injured, I think that's the type of guy the Leafs, could get to like take them over the top past the first round. But to me, I agree. I mean, Timo Meier would just make Toronto like 20 times better than they already are. But I think Toronto mainly needs more defense than forward, in my opinion. I think they're a team that, like you mentioned in some of your videos as well, they're playing Tampa in the first round unless something drastic changes. You're going to have to find a way to compete with Tampa. And I think that's what Kyle Dubas needs to kind of look at going into the deadline, is how do we beat Tampa, essentially, right? So,
I'm a big believer in strengthening your strengths. If you're a bad defensive team, and I'm not saying the Leafs are, but if you're a bad defensive team, getting one guy probably isn't going to fix that issue. So if you strengthen a strength, which for the Leafs is probably perceived to be offense, then all of a sudden you're this high-powered team. And yeah, Patrick Kane might help you offensively, but what's a common criticism of the Leafs? They crumble later in the series, and they're too soft. So we're going to get a guy who's got a bad hip. Or
that's true.
You could go out and you can get a Swiss battering ram that is Timo Meier, and God, it's appetizing.
Yeah, and that's pretty interesting in terms of Timo Meier's dossier.
Oh, well, anyways, in terms of Timo Meier's dossier, basically, Yeah, Chris, you're cutting off a bit, but anyways, yeah, in
Oh,
terms of Timo Meier, I mean, one of the things that's interesting about the Leafs acquiring him is just the fact that, like, he's an RFA at the end of the year. But one of the things too is that, like, I don't know if Toronto could even afford to re-sign him, because there's been talks about how San Jose doesn't want to trade, like, doesn't want teams to talk to him about an extension. So that's why Toronto makes sense. But like, they're gonna have to move guys if they get Timo Meier, right? They're not going to be able to just. I don't know how their cap space is 100%, but I know that they're kind of below that. I know Muzzin might go on LTIR, but if they have to, let's say, acquire Timo Meier, what's your like trade proposal? I would say, in terms of like who they would essentially trade away, and what, like, obviously Matthew Nyes is probably the biggest name that's on that list in terms of prospects. But I know you're a big fan of him and don't want to see him traded. So what's your like ideal proposal? I would say, obviously the first round picks in there, but you know.
There's a number of guys, yeah, like the first round pick you can send out the window. There's a few prospects I would consider getting rid of, but I would look at any trade for a high end player to be a victory if you don't include Matthew Nyes. I'm really excited for this guy to potentially play for the Leafs this year. It sure seems like a possibility. Is he going to be an impact player right away, like Cole Caulfield was a few years ago? I don't know, but it'd be nice to see him just strengthen the left side. That's all he's really got to do, and then you got a left side of potentially, Nyes, Bunting, Yarncroke, and imagine even Meier, if you're able to keep him, or someone else as an upgrade. Maybe you get a center and that pushes Matthews or Tavares to the wing, or that center to the wing, or what have you. You have a million different options. Topi Niemela, his value's a little down. Obviously you're not trading Rodion Amirov, and I bring up his name because the Leafs essentially have not drafted in the first round for the last few years, except for him. But that's probably not going to happen. So you're probably looking at like a Fraser Minton, who they got in the second round last year. Looks like he's doing extremely well in the WHL. Nick Robertson, but his value is probably going to be down a bit. And then beyond that, I'm not really sure who else.
I think Kerfoot gets thrown in there, maybe as like just a cap dump, kind of, or whatever.
I would personally love that, and it's not because I hate the player necessarily. I just the jack of all trades, master of none sort of thing.
Yeah.
But he's like the seven of clubs of all trades and master of none. like the Leafs are able to throw him into all situations, and I think he's fine in all of them. But the problem with the Leafs and the way it's structured up front, is $3.5 million for Kerfoot egregious? I don't think so. Is it egregious for the Leafs? Yes. They can't do it. So if they were able to throw him into a deal, especially if you get a center back, that helps with your versatility. I think that helps you up front. And clears a little bit of cap space for someone really premium.
In terms of Kerfoot, he had a career year last year, 51 points in 82 games, so 13 goals, 38 assists. I'm surprised they didn't deal him during the offseason when his value was at an all-time high. I don't know why they waited on that. It's kind of funny. And now looking at this whole situation where they're not happy with Kerfoot, they're looking at other forwards potentially. For me, if I'm the Toronto Maple Leafs, I would try to get rid of him as soon as possible, so it increases my chances of trying to sign a guy like Timo Meier to an extension, because he's only 26 years old. You would want that a part of your team for years to come, especially if you're planning to be competitive. I would definitely want to do that. And in terms of guys like O'Reilly and other centers being linked to the Toronto Maple Leafs, these guys are first line, second line centers, and you already have John Tavares and Austin Matthews as a 1-2 punch. They're going to be playing third line center at that point. Is it really worth it to trade for centers like that unless you move them to the wing?
Yeah, but Sheldon Keefe's got itchy feet, and he finds he likes adjusting the lineups in game. I think people get way too caught up in the lineup card that they show before a game. If the Leafs manage to get Matthews, Tavares, O'Reilly, or even Matthews, Tavares, Taves. I promise you, O'Reilly will not be playing like 14 minutes. They're going to find ways with the power play, with the penalty kill, with special situations, like if there's an offensive zone face-off, if there's a defensive zone face-off, after a power play, after a penalty kill, they're going to find ways to get those guys ice. Yeah, which is part of the reason why I'm like, well, why not get someone who can push Bunting down the lineup, because they often take him off the first line anyway. Why not get a permanent fixture for the first line?
Well, one of the things that I've actually noticed is too, and it's because it happened over the weekend. Obviously, we saw that Jacob Chikrin was a healthy scratch for trade related reasons, and so I was surprised because obviously there was a bunch of news coming in that teams were in, teams were out, and Jeff Meier confirmed that the Leafs weren't in on it. To me personally, I think, and we had said it when there was a trade, when we had done a trade destinations video on Jacob Chikrin, we believe the Leafs actually were a perfect fit for him too in that type of sense. They, cap space wise, it works. You've dealt with Arizona before. Arizona has what you guys want or are willing to get rid of. So it would have been a good fit. I think Chikrin probably ends up in LA, but I think for Toronto, one of the defensemen that they should be looking at defensemen, right? And obviously Chris had mentioned in a trade destination video in the past too that, if it's not going to be Chikrin, it's going to be either Jake McCabe or Joel Edmondson. And I just kind of want to know your thoughts on like the defensemen that are available. Who do you think you'd want?
I would like to say one thing in addition to what you're saying. The guy they have to trade for has to be essentially comparable to Jake Muzzin, because that is a massive piece that will not be there for the foreseeable future. So you're going to have to replace those minutes and that type of player.
If Kyle Dubas trades a first-round pick for Joel Edmondson, I'll drive him to whatever team wants to hire him after that, because I'll be cheering against him ever signing here again. I like the guy, but like you're giving a first-round pick to the Montreal Canadiens for Joel Edmondson,
our team too. So
as the Leafs general manager, good Lord, yeah, man, you can't do that. Yeah. So McCabe makes some sense. What Dubas wants is cost control. Yeah. And I've seen it out there that the Blackhawks ask for McCabe is astronomical. Well, the reason it's astronomical is if they retain 50% of his $4 million salary, that means you're getting a $2 million player. So a player for the cost of Justin Hall for this season, next, and the year after. There's enormous value to that. Like, cap space is the hardest commodity to come by in the NHL. Marc-Andre Fleury won the Vezina and then got traded for nothing. Oliver Bjorkstrand, who's a fine player, was traded for a third and a fifth round pick, I think it was. Cap space is valuable. So I think fans are bothered by, giving up high picks for guys who play a few games for you and then leave. Brian Boyle, Thomas Plekanec, Nick Foligno, I think it's a special situation. Yes, they gave up the sun and the moon, but then his back gave out. And
that was unfortunate.
It was super unfortunate because no one ever remembers that he actually fit in pretty well, and then he got hurt. But McCabe for a couple of years, that'd be great.
And our last two questions is concerning Kyle Dubas' status after this season. Does he re-sign or is he let go and Toronto goes another route? And the most important question for every single Toronto fan, do the Toronto Maple Leafs pass the first round this year?
Well, the two questions are linked, right? Yeah. Which I don't know if that's the right way to do things, but at the end of the day, Dubas, I think, has consistently had pretty good off seasons, and he consistently has pretty good autumns, and he consistently has decent winters. And it's this part that he struggles with, right? The trade deadline and getting the pieces to get them over the top, and then the getting over the top part. So, I don't like basing the future of the franchise on a single playoff series, but there's no team in this situation. The Pittsburgh Penguins have lost in the first round for several years in a row. The Leafs first round drought begins the last year the Penguins won the cup. So like, to me, like it's not even comparable situations. Dubas, we're starting to see the fruits of his labor. He's made some good trades. The value signings like Samsonov has been wonderful. Matt Murray hasn't been the greatest, but they're able to like put him on IR and LTIR, and you got the Sens to retain, and the Sens gave up picks in order to get rid of him. So like that was okay. We're starting to see some of his draft picks, Pontus Holmberg and guys like that get into the lineup and do pretty well. It would be a shame if this were the end of the road, because I feel like we're just, even though he's been a part of the organization since 2014, he's only really had the reins since 2018, and I feel like we're just getting to know the guy.
Oh. That's how most Habs fans felt when Bergevin was there too. Like, he was there for so long, but you never knew what he was going to do. And then like towards the end of it, you're like, hey, but what's this guy really trying to, like, what you're trying to get to know him now? And then all of a sudden, like, he was gone, and now Kent Hughes is coming in, and we're still only just trying to figure out what he's doing too. So it's cool, I guess.
I'm a Kent Hughes fan. Bergevin is what a mystifying general manager. Mystifying, man. Like he was the worst GM in the league or the best. Like he had two modes.
Agreed 100%. So anyway, Steve, thank you for joining us and taking the time to come on today. Chris, I don't know if you want to end it off.
I would like to say, you're by far, the biggest guest on our podcast. So thank you so much for coming. Us coming from Montreal and, praising someone who loves the Toronto Maple Leafs, that's kind of rare. But, you're a guy that speaks your mind. You're very honest, and we love your reactions. We love what you do. And thank you so much for coming. And best of luck to the Toronto Maple Leafs heading into the deadline and into the playoffs.
You don't mean that.
No, I actually do mean
that.
I actually do mean that. I'm actually one of those rare people that actually want to see the cup back in Canada, regardless.
Not Toronto.
Okay, that's your opinion. My opinion is completely different. That's all I have to say about that. But guys, thank you so much for watching this episode. Big thanks to Steve once again. If you haven't subscribed to our channel already, please subscribe to our channel, like this video, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Young Guns podcast.